Hey everybody, this is Josh,
And this is Dean.
and here we are again with an episode of Finding an Agent. And so this week we're going to start off talking a little bit about what we've done in the past week. And I guess I'll go ahead and kick this one off. So what I've done this week is worked on revising the Red Phantom, particularly heavy focus on the first three chapters so that I can prepare my query letter. I've started doing some preliminary research on agents that I want to query to, and I want to get those first three chapters really good and ready to go for when I start querying agents. And if they want to see first 30 pages, first couple chapters, what have you, I want to have that ready. And so that's what I've been focusing on this week. And I made some really good progress doing that. And I, like I said, started working on researching agents last night and going through trying to find agents that are interested in the material that I have that might be interested in the Red Phantom. I'm not sure if that's going to be New York agents or if it's going to be agents that are maybe looking to sell more to smaller or mid-sized publishers. I'll probably take a little bit of a shotgun effect. I'll probably throw it out there to some of the agents that try to market to the big five, but then I'll also probably target some agents that maybe cater more to mid-sized publishers or what have you. But anyway, that's pretty much been my week. Dean, what have you been up to?
Well, I have been trying some new stuff that's somewhat related. Well, it is related to my book. And I have been messing around with trying to create at least portions of an audiobook for the novel, which is The Matriarchs. And I had never really messed around with, you know, podcasting or, creating audio files or editing or any of that kind of thing. So I use a Mac, and on my Mac there's a program just called GarageBand, and so I opened that for like the first time and started messing around with that and trying to figure out how it works and how to record things and how to edit things. It was a bit of a learning curve, and it took me some time, but I was able to get it where I think I can competently create some kind of audiobook version without spending too much money or going overboard on the budget, which is what I want to do long term, is create an audiobook version, especially if I'm going to be going self-publishing route if the agent submissions do not work out.
Yeah, I think that's something that we might want to talk a little bit about. Maybe tell people a little bit of the thought process behind that expiration date on the agent search and shifting to self-publishing and maybe an audiobook format. Yeah. What's your thought process there?
Okay, so my thought is I've now sent out about 25 agent submissions, and they're all saying that it's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks, I think, before you'll hear anything from them. So that, I'm looking at it, a month and a half to 2 months. But I'm thinking by probably this summer, maybe early June, if I haven't got any positive responses of any kind, then at some point you just have to move on, and you can either just put the work completely aside and do nothing with it, which doesn't really seem very satisfactory to me, or I can try to self-publish it, and which is probably what I'll be switching to, like I said, by early June, if I'm not hearing anything at all from any potential agents.
Yeah, that's understandable. And I think that kind of brings up something. I'm not sure if we've touched on this in the past or not, but something that may be interesting to people watching is that when Dean and I first got together and started writing and started collaborating, we kind of had differing views on traditional versus self-publishing. Dean was very much interested in self-publishing and looking at that avenue. And so for me in the beginning, what I needed was to feel validated by having someone else purchase my work or being represented by an agent, going that traditional route and having someone else that saw value in my work, like someone else meaning a publisher and an agent. To me, that was what it meant to be an author. And that was that was my goal early on, and that's the path that I tried to take in the beginning. Um, at some point, I think Dean and I, we kind of almost like switched. We almost kind of like passed on the highway, and whereas Dean kind of transitioned a little bit from his interest in self-publishing to looking for an agent, and I kind of grew a little disillusioned with the agent search process and ended up self-publishing. Dean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I will say that I think my interest in self-publishing existed when my employment situation was different, and I had a good bit of time that I thought I could devote to that process. As my time has gotten reduced, I've moved more towards trying to submit to agents, just because I realized self-publishing, it really, if you're going to do it right, I think it's a job in and of itself, and you're going to have to devote a good bit of time to it and be able to devote that time to it. And so I think that was part of my change in thinking. However, that said, if I can't get an agent for a novel, the thought of that novel just sitting in a box, or metaphorically in a box, technically it's on my hard drive forever, doesn't seem very satisfactory to me. I would have more, or I get some sense of accomplishment in having the work out there, even if it's just self-published.
Well, one of the things that we want to do this week is we're going to kind of revisit something we talked about last week, which is the elevator pitch, because that's really important. I think one of the scariest questions that you can ever get asked as an author is, what's your book about? And whether that question's coming from a potential reader or a potential agent, either way, if you're not prepared for it, it can be like deer in headlights, paralyzing. You wouldn't think so, but it's incredibly difficult for an author to tell somebody what their book's about. It's hard because when you're an author and somebody asks you what your book is about, you want to start reciting 85,000 words to them, and that's not what people want to hear. So let's talk a little bit about that. Dean, what makes a good elevator pitch?
I think you need to be able to succinctly say what the story is about, and also, importantly, kind of what the hook is of the story, or what is going to draw the reader in. I think you mentioned that it kind of depends on who you're talking to in terms of the elevator pitch. You may have a slightly different elevator pitch for a potential agent versus a person who's just, you're at a party and they ask you what your book's about, and you explain it with the hope that maybe they'll read it or recommend it to someone else. I wanted to say also a little bit, I think part of the reason it's hard to do an elevator pitch is most of us have problems with self-promotion. We don't want to see ourselves as grandstanders, or um, you know as someone who likes to talk about themselves, which most people think there's something wrong with you if you're talking about yourself too much in a conversation. But I think you need to push back past that a little bit and get to a point where you can do a little self-promotion or a little self-advocacy. And I think that's what a good elevator pitch is going to be.
Yeah, I agree. So the elevator pitch, I've done a little bit of research on this a couple of times. I did it once when I was developing pitch materials for my first novel, Hellbender. And then I also did a little bit more research in advance of this episode. And a lot of people have a lot of information posted out there on the internet about how to make a good elevator pitch. And they'll tell you your elevator pitch needs to be about 25 to 30 words long. And then they'll go on and they'll tell you for 15 minutes everything that it needs to do. And it's like, it can be overwhelming. Like, so you have 15 minutes worth of stuff that I need to cram into 25 words. And it can be daunting. And so, and then of course there's this somewhat artificial pressure, I think, that we put on ourselves, or that we feel as authors, to make everything perfect. And not to get too much off on a tangent, but Dean and I went to a writers conference a couple of years ago. And I think the things that I heard from agents at that writers conference made me more self-conscious and more paranoid about the materials than I was before I went. It wasn't necessarily an encouraging experience. It was almost like if you submit a query letter and it doesn't come out perfect, then you're basically shooting yourself in the face. And I
Was
don't
that the
know.
competition where they were reading them out and making fun of them?
Yeah, there was a competition like Dean talked about where people submitted their query letters and you had a panel of agents
Oh, it was
sitting
a
up at
gong
the,
show format,
yeah, it
right?
was a gong show format, and they
Okay.
were sitting up at the front of the room, and they would start reading a query letter. And whenever an agent, I think this is right, whenever
They
the
had a
agent,
panel of 3 agents, I think, right at the front,
I think that's right.
like
And whenever
gong
they
show.
would check out, they would ring their gong. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah, like when they basically said this query letter sucks and ring it, like the gong show.
Right. And if any query letter made it all the way through to the end, and now keep in mind, this is a one-page letter. And so if they were able to read the whole page without all three agents taking a shit on it, then, you were worthy. But I think maybe one person.
Maybe one, yeah.
And
And I kind of tuned out because I was like, I don't know, this seems tacky to me. But
it,
that was just me.
yeah, it almost kind of turned into how quickly can an agent poop on somebody's query letter. And, it's almost like they were competing with themselves to have reasons to dismiss people. And like I said, that became
And
fairly
making fun of people for entertainment purposes, which I didn't think was very kind either.
agreed. And it came across as very daunting, because you think this is something that I've spent a lot of time and a lot of emotional investment in, is my novel and my query letter, trying to sell my novel. And then you see these people looking for reasons to dismiss it quickly, or like Dean said, like getting entertainment out of this. It just wasn't really what I would call a positive experience. And so this part of the process of doing query letters and going to agents and things of that nature, um, it's definitely something that you got to get yourself mentally prepared for. And honestly, I think that writers conference, and then what happened immediately after that with me querying agents and getting negative responses, that played a big role in me deciding to shift away from looking for an agent and going into self-publishing. And there was more than one factor there. There was some time factors, some other economic factors that were involved. But that whole process of getting a little personal interaction with agents and seeing just, how they were towards authors, it didn't really impress me a lot at the time. And so anyway, again, kind of a,
I'll say one more thing about that thing is it, now that I think about it, it reminds me almost of the Joker movie where the big time Johnny Carson type figure played by, I think it was De Niro, or not De Niro.
yeah, it was De Niro.
Okay, De Niro. And he just he plays some footage from the main character's, bombing in his stand-up and shits on his stand-up routine. And it's like, why would somebody with this level of power kind of shit on somebody who's struggling, to get somewhere and make something with their life? And it seemed very much like bullying, I guess, and that whole gong show experience kind of reminded me of that at that writers conference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I can definitely see that. But so anyway, going back to the elevator pitch. All right, so going back to the elevator pitch, with that in mind, that you've got two different audiences, really, or at least two different audiences. You got an elevator pitch that's going to be geared towards agents, and then you've got an elevator pitch that's going to be towards a potential reader. And so with your agent, your elevator pitch needs to tell them what they want to know so that they keep reading your query letter, because most likely your elevator pitch is going to be the opening part of your query letter. As far as other potential readers go, you're going to want something that's going to make them go look up your book. And you don't have to give them all of the information. You don't have to give them a blurb or a synopsis or anything of that nature. You just have to give them that little thing to spark their curiosity so that they go look at your book on Amazon. and they go read the back cover content or the synopsis that you have posted there, just enough to spark their interest to get them to take that next step to look at it. And hopefully if they go look that book up, then they're going to read that back cover content or that synopsis, and they're going to be interested, and they're going to go ahead and buy it. But really all you're trying to do with that elevator pitch is just give them a reason to be interested. And so I guess in the context of those two different audiences, Dean, what would you say as far as an elevator pitch geared towards an agent? What should it contain?
Well, an agent, I think you need to aim it more at the marketability of the book and the sellability of the book. So you want to, like we've discussed before, give them, kind of basic genre, background, how long it is, what kind of market it's going to sell towards. And then you give them probably more of a objective plot synopsis, probably with some spoilers in there, just to kind of let them know what the book is about. Whereas with the other one, I don't know that you'd want to include any kind of spoilers or you try to leave those out.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the agent, they're going to want some of that objective information to know like what type of product they're selling. Like you said, the length, the genre, the audience that it's geared towards. With a potential reader, you're going to want to give them an elevator pitch that sparks their interest. And so it can be a lot shorter. And sometimes that could even be posed as a what if question. I've seen that like.
That's like a good hook, like I was saying, like a hook.
Yeah, like a good, well, what if this and this and this happened? And then the reader's like, yeah, what if that happened? Yeah, I'm going to go look into that. An agent's not going to do that. Like an agent's not going to be interested in a what if pitch, really. I went and I pulled my elevator pitch for Hellbender, and I thought I'd go ahead and share it. Now I'm going to say up front, I don't think this is the best elevator pitch. This is something that I wrote about 3 years ago, and I did use it when I was looking for an agent, and maybe that's part of the reason why I didn't get an agent. But this is the elevator pitch that I was using for agents when I was trying to pitch Hellbender. Hellbender is an 81,000 word horror novel set in 1946 Texas about a 15-year-old boy with a special gift who must face off against evil in order to save his friends and family. It bridges the YA, new adult, and adult audiences. Now, I'm going to say right up front, that last sentence, that it bridges over multiple genres, was probably a real negative. Since then, I've learned that agents don't like that. While that sounds interesting as an author, and at the time that I wrote that, I thought, oh, this sounds really good. It's going to appeal to multiple audiences. Agents don't look at it that way. Agents are thinking, who am I going to sell this book to? And when you write a sentence like that says it's marketable to multiple genres or multiple audiences, then it sounds like it's really not that marketable to anyone in particular. And they don't know what to do with it. They don't know where they're trying to sell it, or they don't have a good feel. And worse than that is they think you as the author probably don't have a good feel for who your market is.
And I'll add to that, I suspect that most agents are pretty risk averse people because their career depends on this, and putting food on the table for their kids and families depends on this. I would tend to think that most agents are going to look at it as, I want an instant market where this will sell and not get me in trouble or cause me to lose revenue, I guess. And so, like you said, when you tell them that it spans multiple genres, you're almost telling them this is a risky endeavor, and you're going to be taking a big risk on it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I did myself any favors there. And with the Red Phantom, that's not an approach I'm going to take. So also a little bit more information on my elevator pitch for Hellbender. I also threw in a comp line at the end. That's just where you compare it to other books that have sold in the past. I compared Hellbender to Kill a Mockingbird meets Needful Things, which I do still think is a good comparison line. But you'll get mixed information on whether you should even consider using a comp like that. Like some things that you read, they'll tell you on your elevator pitch, don't do comparisons because it can, I don't know, it can have multiple effects on the agent. You know, it can make you sound egotistical, like how dare you compare your book to Kill a Mockingbird, or you know, it can turn an agent off if they don't think that's something that's going to sell right now. If they don't think that's a marketable book at this point in time, then they may not be interested. But then you'll see others that want comparisons because they want to have an idea of like what market you're looking at, or I guess how you view your book. Dean, do you have any thoughts on comparisons?
Well, I'll say that I think it does depend on the agent. And when I've submitted with this latest book, I remember one in particular, they specifically asked in their webpage submission form, you know, what books does this compare to? So I think there clearly are some agents that want that. And it might have to do with, once again, like if there's an obvious, you know, market for that type of book, then, you know, they're going to want it. Like if it's something similar to Harry Potter, well, you know, there's probably a ton of people who want to read something similar to Harry Potter. So they're, you know, they know they're not taking too big of a risk on it.
Going back to the conference a little bit, when we went to that conference, I had an opportunity to sit down and talk to an agent, and everything that I'd read about that moment really stressed me out. Like I think I over prepared for it to the point to where it made it a fairly ineffective sales pitch because I was so concerned with delivering the perfect pitch because I felt like if it wasn't perfect, I was going to get shot down. Um, Now, I think it did go okay in the end. As I've mentioned before, that agent did request a full manuscript at one point before eventually declining representation. But you know, it can be pretty stressful when you feel like everything that you do has to be exactly perfect, and and I don't know that that's necessarily the case. If the agent's going to be that hung up on the perfection of your elevator pitch and your query letter and all, at least if you're the type of person that idea of perfection causes paralysis, then that may not be the agent for you. You know, I think you need to write the query letter and the elevator pitch that feels right for you, and then find the agent that is responsive to that. And I think in the long run, that's going to be the best agent relationship that you're going to have. Dean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. And obviously, I think over time you're gonna become less stressed out by it the more you do it, just like anything else.
Yeah. And hopefully at some point, once you get that ironed out and you get an elevator pitch that you're comfortable with, then your work will be done and you'll have it sitting on the edge of your brain. And when somebody asks you what's your book about, you can say, my book is about XYZ. And they'll go, okay, cool. I'm going to go look that up on Amazon.
And I'll say I'm a very, very big believer in kind of coming up with a mental checklist or methodology for doing things, and then you just keep doing it over and over again. And I think this is part of that, which is, you know, you develop your elevator pitch and you do various other things to try and sell your book.
All right. Well, hopefully that information helps. Good luck on writing your elevator pitch. I'm still working on mine for the Red Phantom. And so next week, we're going to catch you up on what we've been doing. Hopefully I'll have some query letters going out this week. That's my plan anyway. And so, Dean, what do you got going on this week?
Yeah, I need to send out a few more query letters, continue that process. And then I've also got I want to create more of this audio book and see how that does for me.
All right. Good deal. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got to start over.
I don't know why that's backwards. It's really weird.
Ah, shit. All right.
We'll get better at this as we go, I guess. And
You know, what's going into the sausage here?
there's definitely some reflection off my head. Yeah, I may end up in federal prison.